All right, let's talk the top quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion. I talked about this on the podcast, but I know some people just watch the videos, so figure I'll make a video about it as well. But yeah, you can check out my, Kyle and I's top 32 list on the podcast. But here we're just doing top 10 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Let's first, before we get into it, go with some honorable mentions, some guys who were close but didn't quite make the cut. Brock Purdy, someone who I think many people might even have high up on their list. I did not quite put on my list. Jared Goff, Tua, Kirk Cousins, all good quarterbacks. Didn't make my list either. And Trevor Lawrence, someone who, again, will make some people's list. Some people think is overrated. I'm kind of in between the two of those people. So, those are my honorable mentions. Let's get into the list itself. Number 10, I am going Matthew Stafford. Still makes the list at 10. Obviously 2 years ago he was banged up, and I think people kind of forgot about him. It was only 3 years ago that he won a Super Bowl, and then last year I thought really played very well. Had a really good playoff game as well. So is someone that has a tendency to show up in the big moments. But even without that, I thought had a real underrated good season and has kind of, been a consistent top 10 quarterback his whole career. It continues. I have him at 10. Number 9, I went with Jordan Love, who is a tough person to really put on a list because his highs are really high. He does have those great games, and I think towards the end of the season last year, he was fantastic. Matthew Stafford, for example, he was great towards the end of the season, but we also kind of know Stafford is, he's a bit of a streaky player. Love, we don't really know that much about him. Is he a streaky player, and did he just kind of have a Matthew Stafford type run, or is it more of a, no, he just got better as the season went along, and is actually like as good as Matt Stafford when he is at his best consistently? I don't know. And so I put him at number 9 for now. There is potential for him to get better. And even if he doesn't, he's still a really good quarterback. So I could definitely see him climbing the rankings, but for now, I decided to put him here. Number 8, Jaylen Herz did make my list, who, again, kind of a tough guy to evaluate. 2 years ago, I think I had him in like top 5, and he didn't play that well last year. I mean, it wasn't as good. I still thought he played pretty well for most of the season. I think that the failures of the Eagles towards the end of the season weren't really because of him, although I did think the offense cooled off a bit. I mean, that defense was atrocious all of last year. It wasn't just the second half of last year. It was bad in the first half too, and the offense is pretty good. I do, obviously with Hurts, it just wasn't as dominant, and you have to wonder how much of like his gameplay is predicated on having really talented receivers, but you could say that about a lot of guys. I think he's shown enough to me. I'm still willing to put him here at 8. But yeah, a tough guy I could easily see him after next year being back in the top 5. I could see him being off the top 10 altogether next year. But for now, 8 feels okay for me. Number 7, I decided to go CJ Stroud, the, first-year player for Houston, who definitely made some rookie mistakes, but for a rookie, you very rarely see a guy play as strong as he did. He got MVP votes, and while I thought that was a bit aggressive, I still thought he was really good last year, and again, you only think should be able to improve on the mistakes he did make and continue to get better as his career goes along. He is someone who, at 7, it does feel like this could end up being the lowest he ends up being, although, again, we have seen plenty of quarterbacks come in, have a great rookie year, and not do a lot after that, but I'm going to bank that he's one of those guys who is just going to continue to get better. Number 6, Aaron Rodgers, who actually, this is a bit of a hot take, me putting him this high. There were some people that didn't even have him on their top 10 list, period. Again, weird guy to evaluate. Weird guy to, how do you rank him is a totally reasonable and fair discussion. He coming off the Achilles injury, that scares me. It just does. That hurts his stock. 2 years ago, I thought he was still pretty good for the Packers. Like, I think last year when I did my rankings, I still had Rodgers like top 5 because of I think when you're playing with a bad receiving core, which it was bad 2 years ago. I know it got better last year. The Packers receiving core was bad last year. Like, you're not going to look as good. You're just not. To me, it's more the age and the injury thing that's kind of hurting it a little bit. But, man, the potential is still so high. You could talk me into him being below someone like Stroud. I think, it's fair. Maybe even a couple other guys. But I don't know. I think that Rodgers has shown he can play at MVP, winning level in a way that, a lot of these other guys haven't. I think 6 feels fair. Number 5, I'm going Justin Herbert. It feels like Herbert is 5th on just about everyone's list because there does seem to be a clear top 4, and then there's a lot of debate as to who goes elsewhere, but Herbert's kind of been 5th of like not quite good enough to be in the top 4 on anyone's list, but clearly, good enough to be ahead of all the other guys who aren't quite good enough to be number 4. Yeah, Herbert, really good. There's not really any weaknesses to Herbert's game. Like, there's not really a lot of negatives you could throw out at Herbert. I think the biggest thing that hurts him is just his team hasn't had success, which, what are you supposed to do? You're one player, and he plays well. He's coming off an injury as well. But yeah, I mean, he's really good, and the Chargers haven't done a lot to help him out. So that's unfortunate for him. But maybe with Jim Harbaugh, it'll work out better. Top 4, as I mentioned, everyone kind of has the same 4 players, although the order in 2 through 4 can be mixed around. But yeah, Lamar is my pick for 4, which, so, I mean, we can say the players. Burrow, Allen, and Lamar are the kind of the 3 guys that people put 2, 3, and 4, and that's kind of the debate there. Lamar has won multiple MVPs. The other guys haven't won any. Lamar has made, a conference championship game just this past season, so he kind of had the same postseason success that Allen has had, although not quite the postseason success Burrow has had. I don't know. It feels weird, but it's like, I don't want to diss Lamar. I think Lamar is amazing. I have no real massive concerns. Lamar has had, occasionally he'll make the poor decision. Like, that does happen. Not too often. He's pretty good at processing things, gets things done pretty quickly. And I do wonder if you gave Lamar the weapons that Burrow had, like, would we see a even better version of Lamar? My main critique, though, and why I ended up putting him at 4 is just, he hasn't been last year's Lamar Jackson consistently. He just hasn't. He's had years where he was just good and was kind of a top 10 quarterback, but not a top 5 quarterback. So the other guys, I think, have been more consistently top 5 quarterbacks, and because of that, I am going to dock him a few points, and when you have to split hairs, I'll put him at 4. Number 3, I did go Josh Allen here at 3. Again, what's the differentiating factor for me? It's not playoff success, because I think Allen's been really good in the playoffs. I think his defense has more so let him down, and even Burrow, I think that 2021 season that Burrow had was actually probably the best season any of these top 3 guys that aren't Mahomes have had. I think that he was great in 2021, but in the playoffs, that was a lot of defense getting it done to get them to the Super Bowl. So, I don't hold that against them. You made a Super Bowl, but when it comes to playoff success, I kind of think Burrow and Allen are both relatively similar in my book. It's just more so, like I said, I think Burrow's one season was a little bit better. I guess the one thing you could maybe fight me on, and maybe this is a fair point, is Allen doesn't have the injury history that Burrow has. I think that could be a nod in Allen's direction, but I don't know. I'm going to say Allen is a really good quarterback. At his best is the elite guy, but I think it's an overblown narrative. It is a fair narrative as well to say with Josh Allen that, he is someone that when he has a bad game, he has a bad game. It happens. It's overblown, but he will, put the ball in harm's way too much sometimes. It is a thing that it is true to some extent. And then number 2, I kind of talked about it a lot during the Josh Allen thing, but yeah, Burrow, again, coming off the injury, I feel like people have forgotten about Joe Burrow. But Joe Burrow is really, really good at football. Like, Joe Burrow is amazing. All of his advanced, efficiency stats are ridiculous. Like, Joe Burrow is fantastic. Joe Burrow is, in my opinion, the second best quarterback in football still. I know people have kind of moved on a little bit and put Allen and Lamar ahead. Like I said, you can make an argument for any of those 3 guys, but the argument I'm going to make is that Joe. And finally, number 1, I mean, it's obvious. Like, how can you even argue anyone else at this point? I don't know if I've ever seen a scenario where we just accept it. Like, when does this ever happen? It happened with LeBron in basketball, where we just accepted he was the best in the league for a while. But, this is very rare, and since I've been watching football, this hasn't been a thing. Even with Brady, there was always the Brady versus Manning, and then it became Brady versus Rodgers, and then it was Brady versus Mahomes, and then there was a brief period of Mahomes versus Allen, Mahomes versus Burrow, Mahomes versus Lamar, but Mahomes won all of those verses, so he's kind of clearly the best at this point. Again, the postseason success, the regular season success, and even the highlights are like the best. So like he checks every box. He's the best quarterback in football. Not really a hot take there. But yeah, maybe some hot takes throughout this video. What do you think of this video? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from ya. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.